Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to part 2 as we look at Kantian Ethics from Immanuel Kant. And this is where we left off, and to, cover this very briefly, to rehash very briefly. Kantian ethics, deontology, has often been defined as what we ought to do or what we should do, which relates to the notion of fulfilling our duty, that we have certain duties that we must fulfill, and we have to fulfill them all the time, which, as we will see later, is something that's been criticized a bit from Kant. But then, for Kant, actions really depend on the person having, the goodwill or good intent, and not really looking at the end result, which is different from the utilitarian ethics that focus heavily on the end result and not so much as to what took place to get to that end result. And then the notion of the goodwill leads into the categorical imperative. So what is the categorical imperative? Well, let's look at it. Well, one of the first things to understand is that any decision that a person makes must be with a person who is rational and or of sound mind, and it must be a well thought out decision, and I'll kind of explain what is being referenced here. The notion here of rational and or of sound mind, I would say, is someone, a well thought out decision, but particularly an individual not thinking on emotion. Because often at times, when individuals think on emotion, they think out of anger, the spur of the moment, you could say, which is heavily what Kant is getting at here. They often do things that had they have thought about it more, they would have never have done. So Kant, states that the person must be of rational, and or of sound mind. But that is something that also later is subject to criticism. But in any case, the categorical imperative, it consists of 3 steps. So, what are these 3 steps? Well, the first is, whatever decision that a person makes, that decision needs to be set to the maximum. So essentially, with the first step, you think of everybody making that same decision. The second step, don't use others as a means to an end. Don't take advantage of people in decision making. And the third, if the decision is one that an individual would want to become a universal law, well then make the decision, and if not, well then don't make the decision. So the concept of it becoming a universal law would mean that this is something that would affect you as well, that you would also be factored into this. So here's, an example of using the categorical imperative. Let's say that you need $20. And how you're going to get that $20 is you're going to knock somebody down and take their money. Basically, you're going to steal from them. Okay. Step 1. Whatever decision that a person makes, you set it to the maximum. That essentially anyone in your exact same position, you factor them doing or making this potential decision. So everyone's factored in. Step 2, don't use others as a means to an end. Well, unless you go after the most vulnerable in society, you wouldn't be using others as a means to an end. If everyone is treated the same, then they're not being used as a means to an end. Third, if the decision is one that the individual would want to become a universal law, well, then make the decision. If not, then do not make the decision. That essentially, you would be fine under the scenario of somebody in the exact same situation as you knocking you down and taking your $20. Most would say no to that question or to that idea. So therefore, under the categorical imperative, this would not become a universal law, and therefore, obviously, it wouldn't go into effect. It's not a difficult concept, it's just getting it to work properly. Kind of like utilitarian ethics are in many respects. You know, seek the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. Pretty simple idea in thought. Just getting it to work properly is often a problem. But in any case, back with Kant, a lot of what I've just described, many of you are probably thinking, how is what I've said any different than the golden rule? Treat others as you would like to be treated. Well, need to look a little bit here at Kant and the golden rule. Well, Kantian ethics have been thought to be similar to the golden rule, but Kant found the golden rule to be flawed. And let me have a quick sip of water and I will focus on this. As mentioned earlier, with the categorical imperative, it does come across as very similar to the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, but Kant found the golden rule to be flawed. And it's an interesting thought to declare the golden rule to be flawed because it's been praised since ancient times. But here are 3 criticisms of the golden rule. One criticism is that the golden rule makes no mention about our ability to develop to our full human potential. In explaining this particular criticism, I think of one of the classrooms that I taught in, and how this class that met on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in the later portion of the afternoon, well, on Friday, when that class ended, nobody was going to be coming into that classroom. So, what if I just wanted to stay in that room all weekend? The golden rule, in its principle, treat others as you would like to be treated, would allow me to do that. But what does that say about developing, to a full human potential? Well, it doesn't say anything. And that was something Kant pointed out. Another criticism, and one that I think is a lot stronger, the golden rule lacks empathy. Simply put, the golden rule is selfish. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Well, maybe the way that you would like to be treated is not how I would like to be treated. And maybe how I would like to be treated is not how you would like to be treated. But the golden rule in of itself doesn't, look at that. Treat others as you would like to be treated. You, I, me. It focuses on the self. It doesn't look at the other person and doesn't recognize that maybe the way you would like to be treated is not how I would like to be treated, and vice versa. One last criticism. The golden rule can be used for decisions that many would find unethical. For example, a prisoner asks a judge to pardon him. Kant himself focused on this point, where you have a scenario where a prisoner or / defendant, however you want to look at it, the court case is over, the judge is getting ready to pass sentence, but the prisoner is like, well, wait. If I was the judge, I would pardon you. Treat others as you would like to be treated. If I was the judge, I would pardon you. You couldn't really have laws in such a scenario. I mean, I guess in theory you could, but they'd be what we call blue laws, which are laws that are on the books, but basically they're not in effect. So, essentially, Kant saw that with the golden rule, even though it has been praised since ancient times, it cannot be used as a universal law for the reasons that are described here. So, in any case, we're going to stop here, and when we come back, we will be joined by my Introduction to Philosophy students as we look over some of the criticisms of this particular ethical theory from Kant. So, take care. I will symbolically see you then.